We are going to look at solving multi-step equations with examples and important things to remember when you're solving these kinds of equations. The first thing we have to remember is our inverse operations. Okay, so with inverse operations, they're kind of paired together. So addition and subtraction are going to go together. Multiplication and division are going to go together. Okay, and with inverse operations, the point of remembering the inverse operations is we want to be able to undo what's being done so that we can give the variable by itself. Okay. Um, Looking at this next example, it's also important to remember the distributive property with this example, okay? And what the distributive property says is that if we have this number on the outside of the parentheses, we have to take this number and distribute it to every term that's inside of the parentheses. So for instance, we would take this 3 and multiply it by s, and we would take this 3 and multiply it by 1. That would give us a new equation of 3 times s is just going to be 3s, because remember that number in front of s is just a 1. So 3 times 1 is 3, and then 3 times 1 is also 3. So we would have 3s plus 3 plus 1 is equal to 10. Now, to make this a little bit more friendly, we want to combine like terms, okay? So we've got this variable. I'm going to place a red circle around any number with the s variable. So in this case, we have 3s. And then we have positive 3, no variable, and then positive 1 with no variable. So I'm going to place that green box around each of these. And remember to include that sign that's in front. This is a positive 3, and this is a positive 1. And now we can go through and we can combine like terms. We could say that 3 plus 1 will give us 4. So our new equation is 3s plus 4 is equal to 10. Now we have this two-step equation that we can solve just by following the steps. So I'm going to draw my line where the equal sign is, okay, telling me what side of the equal sign is what. And then I'm going to do inverse operations. So I want to get this variable alone. So we're going to leave this 3s alone for right now. We want to get the 4 away though. So in order to do that, we have a positive 4. So we have to remember the inverse operation of addition is subtraction. So we're going to subtract this number 4 from both sides of the equal sign. What will happen is positive 4 minus 4 is just going to cancel, leaving us with 0. And then 10 minus 4 will leave us with 6. So now we can rewrite our equation. We've got 3s is equal to 6. And if we knew what s was, what number it was, we would multiply that number by 3. So that means the inverse operation of multiplication is going to be to divide both sides by this number that's with s. So in this case, we have a 3 with s, so we're going to divide both sides by 3. And this is going to cancel, leaving us with just 1, or just s is what it's going to be. And then 6 divided by 3 is going to leave us with an answer of 2. Now, we want to go back through and we want to just double check and make sure that this is actually correct. So we could say 3, and then anywhere we have that variable s, we're going to plug in a 2 instead. So 2 plus 1 is equal to 10. We're going to do the parentheses first because that's what the order of operations is going to tell us. When we're not solving for a variable, we're going to go back to PEMDAS. So we're going to do parentheses first. So 2 plus 1 is 3. So we've got 3 times 3 plus 1 is equal to 10. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 more is 10. So this would check. This is going to tell us that s is equal to 2. Let's look at another example of this. And again, in this case, we still have the distributive property, okay? So the distributive property, we have to distribute this -3 to y and to -8. We're going to distribute it to everything in the parentheses. -3 times 1 is going to give us a -3y. And then a -3 times a -8. Remember your rules with multiplying integers, okay? A negative times a negative will give you a positive answer. So we're going to actually have a positive 24. 3 times 8 is 24. our answer will be positive. And then this is going to be a -3. Now we can go through our steps and solve this just like a two-step equation. We want to get that variable loan. So we're going to start with this positive 24 and we're going to subtract 24 from both sides of the equal sign. Oops, 24. And this is going to cancel, just leaving us with 0. Now 3 minus 24, we can also say that this is a 3 plus a -24. Okay, add the opposite. So in this case, we would actually say 3 plus 24 is 27. And since we added two numbers that are negative numbers, with addition, the rule is different. If you add numbers with the same sign, you're going to keep that sign and just add the numbers together. So 3 plus 24 is 27. Since we added a -3 and a -24, we would get a -27. Now we can rewrite the -3y equals -27. And we know that anytime you see these numbers written, this term written this way, if we knew what this variable was, we'd multiply. So we're going to divide as the inverse operation, divide both sides by -3. We know that 3 can go into 27 9 times, and a negative divided by a negative is actually going to give us a positive answer. So we would say that our answer is a +9. Okay, we're going to go back and just kind of plug this in to check our answer. So any place that you see a y, we're going to plug in that variable, the number that we found for the variable, which is 9. So 9 minus 8 equals -3. And then -3, 9 minus 8 is 1. And we know that a -3 times a +1 is going to give us a -3. The signs are different, so our answer will be -3 times 1 is 3. So this does check and tell us that y is equal to 9 in this case. Let's look at another example. Remember, multi-step equations are not always going to involve the distributive property. So there are different ways that you'll see multi-step equations written. It just means that there's going to be additional steps. It's not just going to be the two. So I have these terms: 10n plus 4 is equal to 5n plus 6n plus 6. Well, the first thing I notice right off the bat is that I have this 5n and the 6n on the same side, and I can actually combine these terms together. I could say 5n and 6n, and then this +6, we're going to leave this alone because it does not have a variable. Okay, so it cannot be combined. So our new equation is going to say 10n plus 4 is equal to 5 plus 6 is 11n, and then plus 6. Okay. Now I'm going to write my line separating the equal sign. And what I want to do is I want to get the variables all on one side of the equal sign, and I want to get the numbers without variables all to the other side. Okay, so I'm going to first start by getting the variables to one side. And I can see here I've got an 11n and I've got a +n. So I'm just going to subtract 10n from both sides. And I know some of you are watching this video and saying, well, wait, before when we were solving two-step equations, we knew that 10 would be multiplied by n. So why are we not dividing? Well, in this case, we have not gotten to that point yet where we are looking at multiplication or division. We're just trying to organize the problem a little bit better so that the variables are on one side. So we're going to take the variable with us in this case, okay? And this is going to be 11n minus 10n, which is just going to leave us with n, okay? Now, and I'll rewrite this down here. I've got a 4 equals n plus 6. Now I want to get this variable by itself by moving the 6 to the other side. And in order to move it, we're going to look at the fact we have addition. So we're going to subtract 6 from both sides, okay? 6, +6 minus 6 is going to cancel for us, leaving us with 0. And then 4 minus 6, we can actually say that this is 4 plus a -6. Remember, subtraction is the same thing as adding the opposite. So now we have an addition problem, but the signs are different. So we're going to look at what is the bigger number, and that is 6, okay? So 6 minus 4 is 2. We want to find the difference between the two, even though we're not really subtracting, okay? Then we want to look back and say, okay, so since 6 was my bigger number and the 6 was a negative number, that's going to be the answer. That's going to be the sign of our answer, okay? So in this case, we're going to keep the negative. We're going to say n is equal to -2. Now we can go through and just to check and make sure that this is correct, we can say 10. I have an n here, so I'm going to say a -2 plus 4 is equal to 5 times a -2 plus a 6 times a -2 plus 6. And then I multiply first. Okay, so 10 times -2 is a -20 plus 4. 5 times a -2 is a -10. And then 6 times a -2 is -12. So I'm going to just write this as -12 and then plus 6. Okay, so I've got a -20 plus 4 is going to give us a -16. -10 plus a -12 is going to give us a -22 because we are adding two numbers that have the same sign. Okay, we added the opposite. 10 plus 12 is 22. Keep the negative sign. And then we bring down the 6. So -22 and a +6, the signs are different. So -22 is bigger. So 22 minus 6 will give us 16. And then since 22 was a bigger number and it was negative, we're going to keep that for our answer, the negative sign. So this is going to prove that our answer is going to be n is equal to -2. Okay. I'm going to look at another example. Okay. This has multiple steps to it. Okay. This is going to be a little bit of a challenge question. All right. The first thing you want to look at is we can actually distribute this 7 into this side of the equation. So we're going to do that first before we start combining terms. Okay, so we're going to distribute 7 to -4 and then 7 to 10. This is going to leave us with -7n plus 8 plus 5 is equal to 7 times -4 is a -28n. And then 7 times 10 is a 70, +70. And then we're going to leave the 6 here. Now we can go through and we can combine terms, okay? So I'm going to place a red circle around those terms with variables, okay? And remember too, we're only combining terms on the same side of the equal sign. So we can only combine -7n, 8, and 5 if it's possible. And on this side, we can only combine -28n, 70, and 6, okay? So on this side, I have a -7n. And then on this side, I have a -28n, okay? Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to place that green box around those numbers that don't have a variable. So +8, +5, +70, and then +6. So when I go through and I combine terms, this -7n, I can't combine with anything over here because it's the only circle I have on this side of the equal sign. So I'm going to leave that alone. 8, +8 and a +5 are going to add together to be 13. And then I have -28n. I can't combine with anything on this side because it's the only term with a variable. And then a +70 plus 6 is going to give me a +76. Now I kind of have it set up the same way that the last equation we looked at. So we're going to solve it the same way. We want to get these variables to one side of the equal sign and we want to get the numbers without variables to the other. So we're going to start with the variable and we're going to say, okay, I have -28n. So I'm just going to add 28n. I'm taking the variable with me and I'm going to add 28n over here as well. This is going to cancel, leaving us with 28 plus, or I'm sorry, negative 7 plus 28. We're actually going to subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So this is going to be 28 minus 7 is 21n. And since 28 is the bigger number and it is positive, we're going to leave this as a positive number. And then I have plus 13 equals 76. So now I can get this 13 to the other side by subtracting. And that's going to cancel for us. And this is going to be 6 minus 3 is 3. And then 7 minus 1 is going to be 6. So my new equation that I'm working with is 21n is equal to 63. And this is where now we have the multiplication. So we want to do the inverse, which is division. We're going to divide both sides by 21. And this is going to be, we can guess this 21. We can say that, okay, so 1 times 3 would be 3. So let's say that n is equal to 3. And you could double check this. 21 times 3, 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6. So this does work. So we would say that n is equal to 3. Okay. When we go back and check this, and I'm going to have to make some room in order to check it. So if you're following along, you know, you can always pause this before I erase this, or you can always go back and write this down as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take this stuff and make some room for us so that we can go through and check it. So I'm going to plug this in, negative 7. I have an n, so I'm going to put this as 3. Then I have a positive 8, a positive 5 is equal to 7 times negative 4 times 3 plus 10, all in the parentheses, plus 6. So I want to do the parentheses first, okay? And since the multiplication is in the parentheses, we're going to do that part before we add 10. So negative 4 times 3 is going to give us a negative 12 plus 10. And then we're going to add 6. And then this is going to be 7 times negative 2 plus 6, which is going to be negative 14. Negative 14 plus a positive 6, that's where we have to find the difference. We know our answer is going to be negative because 14 is bigger than 6. And so that we would say that this is a negative 8. Okay, now we can do the same over here. We've got negative 21. Okay, plus 8 plus 5. Negative 21 plus 8. This is where our addition rules come into play. We would subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. So 21 minus 8 is going to be 13. And since 21 is bigger, this would be a negative 13. And then we want to add 5. Same thing we're going to do here. We're going to actually subtract 13 minus 5 will give us 8. And since 13 is the bigger number, we're going to keep the sign of the larger number, which is negative 8. So we would say that, yes, this is going to check and show us that the answer for this question is going to be n equals 3.